All right. So tonight we're going to talk about culling and editing. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit heavy tonight. I feel like there's going to be a lot of questions that you might have still at the end. Hopefully this will just be like a brief overview. And then when you actually start culling and editing, you can kind of figure out those harder questions as you go. So as always, we're going to start off with a little quote. The picture that you took with your camera is the imagination you want to create with reality. And I have conflicting feelings about this quote. It's because sometimes I feel like I want to catch reality and not like create what I believe to be reality. And I feel like when you get into editing, a lot of the times people create what they wanted to be reality. You can add all kinds of like sun flares, and you can add, like perfect skin and make people look skinnier, right? And like maybe that's what people want to be reality, but like we also have to realize that our job is to capture reality. So I put that in there for just a little bit of spice tonight. All right, so overview, we're going to first talk about culling, Lightroom, and then Photoshop, and then ultimately delivery, how we deliver all of the pictures after we've edited them. So to start, I wanted to talk about culling. Some people don't know what culling is. Culling is just like selecting the best pictures. So if I take 5,000 pictures on a wedding day, I'm not going to edit all 5,000 and then decide which one I'm going to deliver. I want to pick the best pictures first and then go bring them into Lightroom and edit. When I first started, I used Lightroom. Like I would import all the pictures into Lightroom and then just go through them in Lightroom and edit my favorite ones. But I found this to be like really time consuming because I would sit and go through like 6 of the same picture till I find the best one, and then I would edit it. And then I would go to the next, set and like find the best one and then just edit that one. I found it to be a lot more efficient to go through all those pictures first and then bring them into Lightroom and edit them. Plus it kind of breaks up your workflow so that it's a little bit less daunting of a task, I guess. You're not trying to cull and edit at the same time. You can, of course, like in Lightroom, go through all the pictures and just like label them a color or a number and then sort them by that and then edit them. So there is a way that you can edit in Lightroom, but I found that it like really bogged down my computer with like storage. And so that's another reason why I moved away from culling in Lightroom. Plus it's a lot easier if you don't cull in Lightroom because Lightroom looks at the whole file. So it's a very large file. In some of these other softwares, it'll create what's called an XMP file, which is a lot smaller and compressed. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to see if the photo is completely in focus with an XMP file, but it's still way faster. You can go through photos a lot faster than in Lightroom if you're looking at the huge raw file. So a lot of photographers start with Lightroom, but I have moved into using Photo Mechanic and Aftershoot. And then another one that some people use is Narrative Select. And I think there's a free version of Narrative Select, and that's why a lot of photographers use that. Don't quote me on that because I'm not sure, but I use Photo Mechanic, which is like a one-time subscription cost. I just bought it and then downloaded it onto my computer. And then I also use Aftershoot, which is a yearly cost. So that's kind of a bummer, but we make it work. So let me kind of show you a little bit about my culling process. This here is Photo Mechanic. So when I get pictures, right now I have a card in my computer. I open up Photo Mechanic and I hit File, Ingest, and then it's basically like copying and pasting pictures from like the folder on the SD card into like wherever I want to save them. If I want to save them onto my computer, if I want to save them onto a hard drive, I always personally put them on a hard drive. So right here is the SD card that I have hooked up into my computer. This is where I decide where I want to save the pictures. So I already did save these pictures, but last night I did the Verdot family. So I saved them into a new folder on my hard drive here. Okay, so then once I hit ingest, it starts loading them all into Photo Mechanic for me. So let me show you. I guess it doesn't really matter. Well, look here. It starts loading all of these guys into Photo Mechanic for you. Okay, I only use Photo Mechanic to do my sneak peeks because I find it easier to like quickly go through pictures in here and find sneak peeks, and what they do is called tags. So like say if I wanted this picture to be in the sneak peek, I would hit T on my keyboard. It tags the picture. Then I can go here and sort it by the tagged photos. And then here are all the tagged pictures that I went through. All this weird like coloring stuff and like the crop is what I've already done Lightroom and after shoot. So it wouldn't look exactly like this. I wonder if I can show you. Here's one. This is what it normally looks like when you first ingest all the photos. I already did the sneak peek for this family. So here's the photos that I chose for the sneak peek. After I did that, I select them all and then I right click and hit edit selected photos. Once I hit that, it's gonna auto populate into Lightroom. Okay, it'll come up into Lightroom. You can also ingest photos, import photos and videos into Lightroom there. You can select, so this would be the SD card in my computer right now. You can import all the pictures into Lightroom that way as well. But if I come straight from Photo Mechanic, it's not going to select all the pictures. It's only going to select the photos that I tagged or that, because I said like edit selected photos in Photo Mechanic. Let's see here. So if we'll see if it works this way. I'm not sure. Edit selected photos. Yes, I want to edit those ones. I don't know if it's going to work because I already did this, but it would come up and it would only have the pictures selected that I had already tagged. So it's not going to import all 500 photos or 600 photos that we took last night. It's only going to put those like 5 that I picked. Okay. So then another important thing right over here is where I click build smart previews and then don't import selected or suspected duplicates. So if I've already imported for a sneak peek, but I am now importing the rest of the photos for the entire gallery, I don't want it to import the ones for the sneak peek again. So that's why I select that second one. Smart previews, however, are it makes in Lightroom a smaller file so that you can edit faster, and you can also edit without your hard drive being plugged in. Okay, since I have all these photos saved on a hard drive, if I didn't do a build smart preview, I would always have to have my hard drive plugged in to be able to edit any types of pictures unless I hit that build smart preview, because then it saves just a littler file on your actual computer that you can edit off of. Then basically what happens is if you unplug your hard drive, you're editing just on the smart preview. Then when you plug back in your hard drive, those smart previews basically copy and paste onto the bigger raw file. Then you have your full image again. So let's go back here. Okay, so that's Culling. We're right into Lightroom. So let's talk about a little bit about editing and the way that you can organize in Lightroom. Okay, so right now I have a catalog open, which is like the overarching large folder. Think of it as like the biggest folder. So my catalog right now is like, I don't know, whatever this is, it named it for me. Some people edit catalogs, like they create a new catalog for every single, shoot that they do. I don't do it that way because then it's hard to go back and forth between catalogs. So I just create one big catalog. Maybe if I had like 2 different companies, like a branding photography versus like a wedding photography, and I only did those 2, maybe I'd have 2 catalogs separate for those. But in my case, I literally import everything into the same catalog. So you can see over here, all my folders that are on my passport. All these folders have been imported. It's not the best organization technique to use folders because it imports them all. It says like my passport. Obviously, the ones that are lit up are on the passport or on the hard drive that is plugged into my computer. The ones that aren't, that have like little question marks here, those are on a different hard drive, but it's still called my passport. So that's why it kind of lumps them all into one little location. Okay, so then let's talk about collections. So collections down here is basically like a new folder. So let me explain. In my hard drive for Ashley and Joe's wedding, I just am starting theirs today. I had a second shooter for their wedding, so it imported as that folder name, second shooter. Okay, and then I also had like my photos, and it was called main shooter. So I kind of have 2 different folders on that hard drive that I have photos for the same wedding. So what I did is I highlighted all the photos in both of these folders and put them into a collection called Ashley and Joe. So then I can go through and edit all of Ashley and Joe's photos. Okay, just like a little bit more cohesive. Sometimes people do like subfolders too. You can make like sub collections, I think they're called, or sets, collection sets, that's what they're called. And you could do like getting ready photos, bridesmaids, or, you know, bridal party. I don't know why I can't think tonight. Family pictures, all that kind of thing. Okay. So that's why some people use collections. It just organizes them a bit better for for editing. It also like breaks up your workflow a little bit. So if I put like just the getting ready photos in a folder, I can look and be like, oh, I only have to edit 200 pictures for getting ready and I'm going to be done with that section. Then tomorrow I'll do the next section. I don't know. I just like to keep going and make it all cohesive in one. So it's really up to you. So that's kind of the structure of Lightroom. Okay. One last thing to mention down here, publishing services, you can hook up plugins to your Lightroom that help you publish your photos. Okay. These ones were all on there. I don't use any of those. I do use Pixieset. Pixieset is my delivery service. We'll get into that later, but you can upload straight from Lightroom to your Pixieset with this plugin. Okay. And then if you were to need to go back and edit something after you've delivered it, it would automatically upload into Pixieset from your Lightroom. So that's kind of a neat feature. But the thing that I don't like about it is that then I don't have a saved copy of the JPEG on my hard drive because I never exported it to a JPEG on like my hard drive. I only ever just like sent it straight to the internet, if that makes sense. So I usually still end up exporting it and just saving it to my computer. But sometimes if I like want to send proofs or something, that might be an easier way to do is just to use your plugin for Pixieset. Okay, enough about that. Let's go back. I was going to show you a newborn. We're going to talk about how to edit. This is baby Harlow. She's so cute. I was going to do a picture I actually didn't deliver. I think it's this one here. Okay, so I haven't edited this photo yet. She's pretty darn cute. Right now I'm in the library tab. So the library tab is where you kind of organize your photo structure. Okay, the file structure, I mean. When you actually want to start editing, you hit over this develop. And right now I'm using Lightroom Classic, just so you know. Some photographers use just regular Lightroom. The Lightroom Classic has a few like more features that just make it a little bit more professional. So that's why I suggest Lightroom Classic. Okay, so over here are all my presets, okay? You can also look at history, like this one, obviously I haven't done anything to it. I just imported it. Once you start editing it, it'll show you all the history of the photo. And then also what's something kind of nice about these collections is you can move between collections when you're in the develop tab. You don't have to go back to library and then go to a new folder. If I was working on one, I could go right over to a new collection in the develop tab. Okay, but mostly I just use the presets over here. All of my saved presets. There's too many of them. I should sort them. Okay, so the first thing that I would do, let's just talk through our color histogram, everything, color grading, all the things over here. So starting off, just the basic color structure. You're going to start with white balance. I always start with white balance. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to click somewhere over here to make it white. Okay, so my background is now white. Obviously that background was not white, right? It was more of like a tannish cream, but it's the closest to white that I have. So I'm going to start there. Obviously now I'm just going to kind of move my temp to make her skin tone a little bit more realistic. Okay. So let's start there. That's with white balance. Then tone is like exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, blah, 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 blah. You can use all these sliders to make this picture how you want it to be seen. This has to do with light. Okay. This has to do with texture, clarity, vibrance, saturation. So vibrance and saturation are like how colorful you want a photo to be. Texture and clarity just adds like texture and clarity to a photo. The easiest way to work with these and start kind of is just like messing around with them. Start seeing, sliding things, see what you like, what your preference is. Probably the biggest thing though here is your tone curve. Okay. So if down here is your shadows, up here is your highlights. Okay. So what you can do at any point in the curve, you can move the curve around, right? So you can make your highlights really vivid, obviously like, oh, we don't want that, right? But this is how you make your photos almost a little bit like you per se. This is where presets start to differentiate, okay, is right here in this tone curve. All right, then HSL is hue, saturation, and luminance. Hue, do you want your oranges to be more yellow or more red? Do you want your yellows to be more orange or more green. Okay, so literally you can go through and use the hue. Saturation is like, how do you want the reds to really stick out, or do you want them to be more dull? That looks creepy. So, and then luminance is how bright. So do you want your reds to be really bright or really dark, right? So there's just things that you just gotta mess around with. Then color grading. Your midtones are like between your shadows and your highlights. They're called your midtones. So do you want them to be more yellow? Do you want them to be more blue? Obviously, you're not going to be to these extremes, right? We don't want extremes, but you might want it a little bit more blue if that's more the tones you're going. For shadows, you might want, more red or whatever. So you can kind of mess around with those. Detail is like sharpening, noise reduction. Noise reduction, if you have a lot of grain, sometimes I'll kind of move that up just to give it a more like hazier feel. This photo didn't have a lot of grain though, so I would leave that down. Lens correction, if you want to correct, lenses are obviously like cylinder, right? Or kind of look like this. It takes a picture almost, it doesn't take a flat picture. So that's where lens correction comes in. If I hit enable profile corrections, you see it flattens the image. So it's more flat and not so like rounded like the lens. I always have these two selected. Remove chromatic abrasion is like, if I were to be taking a picture into a sunlight and there's sometimes like, you get like almost like a glow around someone's face, that kind of helps with it's called a chromatic abrasion. You can kind of decrease that look. Yeah, okay, so transform, effects, all these things, go through and just mess around with until you find something that you like. Then once you have features that you like and you want to apply to all your photos, you can create what's called a preset. So that's what these over here are. If I had set all these things and I wanted to create a new preset, I could just hit this plus, create preset, and it'll ask me, what do you want to save? Do you want to save your white balance, your tone curve? Like, do I want to make sure that every photo's cropped the same? Like, we can do all those things here. Okay. Also, if I want to copy and paste a preset or something that I've already edited. So in this case, oh, that's the Photoshop version. I edited this photo in Lightroom. I want to use the same like tones, all the different, I realized I was pointing at my screen. You can't see what I'm pointing at my screen. All the different color balances that I had here, I want to apply to this photo too, because it's in the same set. So I'm going to hit Command C, or you can hit over here, copy. Then you can decide what you want to copy. So usually I leave it about the same. I don't want it to copy the crop because obviously the crop's going to be different. Transform is kind of the same as crop, not really, but kind of. So I don't really want to do that. So I'm just going to I have all these set already, and I'm going to hit copy. The next one, you can either hit Control V or just paste, and it pastes it right on there. Obviously, I still want to do a few things like crop. So the crop tool is right over here. First of all, I want to like angle it a little bit differently, just so that she's a little bit more, I don't know, creative eye here. And then crop out maybe a little bit so that her face is right in the middle there. Okay, so there's the crop tools here. If I needed to do like a healing brush, so if I wanted to just go in and take out this little baby pimple on her, I could hit this little band-aid, and I'm going to make my size. You can either use the size here, or I just like use the scrolling on my mouse, and I can just pop it out. It takes from down here and basically copies and pastes it up here. Okay, so that's an easier way. There's also a way to do it in Photoshop that's a little bit easier, and I'll show you that in just a second. But okay, there's that. Red eye, I rarely use because I rarely have red eye correction that I need to do. But like, say you took a picture with a flash and you need to correct red eye, you can just use that there. And then this is the masking tool. See, I'm trying to keep a high level, but there's a lot here, guys. So this new feature, excuse me, in Photoshop is super nice. The adding a mask, that it basically uses artificial intelligence to tries to like decide what is your subject or what would be the sky. Okay, so this photo doesn't have a sky, but say we want to just select the subject. It uses artificial intelligence, basically like just selected her, right? And it did a pretty good job. So if I just wanted to increase the exposure of her or something instead of the whole background as well, I could just select her with that select subject. So I'm just going to delete this. Delete mask one. You can also just use like a brush. So if I wanted to do just like under her eyes or something, obviously that's not specific, but I could just do under her eyes. Let's see. I could also use like a gradient, like say my flash, you can tell in this photo was coming from the right side. If I wanted to increase the brightness over on this side, like you can use a gradient tool and then just like increase the exposure on this side to more match the other side. So I mean, you can go like crazy wild, see how it only does in that gradient field. So there's that. I actually kind of like that. Then it makes it a little bit more even. So there's some things in Photoshop. We kind of hit everything. If I wanted to start fresh and didn't copy and paste a preset, I could always start fresh by like putting my preset on here, doing my white balance, cropping. You know, my feet are obviously in that picture. Correcting white balance, little overexposed shadows. I want to go down, you know, I have those two selected. Maybe I has a little bit too much grain, so I want to add some noise reduction, whatever, you know, it's too red, so I'm going to take out some of those. So that's what I'm talking about if you want to start from scratch. But since I had already edited some of these, it was nice I could just copy and paste from the last image. Okay, so now for babies, and usually only for babies, I pop them into Photoshop because it's just a lot easier to smooth skin in Photoshop. So let me show you here. I am going to right click on this image and hit, edit in Photoshop. Okay. Mine asked me these weird questions. I've never had it ask these questions before until recently. So now I had to Google it. But now it's like opening Photoshop. Yours probably won't ask these questions. It's being stupid. I think I need to switch something, but I'm not technologically smart enough. Okay, so here it just opened in Photoshop from Lightroom. So what I want to do, I want to zoom in. I'm going to work on just the skin for now. There's a few things I want to take away. So I'm going to start with the healing brush, this one right here. Okay. You can increase the size of the brush up here. Okay, I'm going to just need a little one because I just want to go through and kind of like pop out these little imperfections on her face, right? Just do a few here. So there's the imperfections, right? We're just going through it. It's called using content aware. You can see it right there. Photoshop is basically deciding like what would be best to fill the space that you're clicking on. Okay, so it does a pretty darn good job, and I think it's faster than than Lightroom. Photoshop's faster for this specific tool. Okay, so I removed some of those imperfections. Now let's say I see a little hair down here on her face. See that little like a fuzzy almost? Let's say I tried to use the healing brush and it just wasn't working to remove that. I'm going to use something called the Culling stamp. Okay, so that's this one right here. I'm going to decrease the size of my brush just so it's about as small as, yeah, right there. Okay. Then what the Culling stamp does is you select an area that's close or similar that you want to clone to that spot. So I'm basically just going to clone right underneath it, right to where that string is at on her face. Okay. So you hit Alt. Oh, no, on mine it's Option. I think maybe on a Windows it's Alt. I don't really have to look it up. So it's going to copy from right there. And I'm just going to go through and like overwrite it. Oh, right there, it's going to get the fuzzy again. So I'm just going to do Alt again and then go over. Obviously that wasn't perfect because it was lighter down here than it is here. So maybe I need to clone up here instead. So it's a little bit darker. And then maybe I need to stop there and then clone here. I don't know. Something like that, right? That's not the perfect example because it's not cloning great. I wonder if my opacity is at 100. You could like turn your opacity down a little bit. I can try again. Option. I still want it dark, but not that dark. So my opacity is down. Looks a little better, right? This scenario, you probably could just use the healing brush. It would probably do a pretty good job. See like the healing brush here. Oh, there it thought it needed to put the string back in, but there we go. Gone. Just going to clean up a little bit of things down here. Okay. There's that. Okay. So then I also have actions in Photoshop that I use to smooth baby skin. I bought these actions. I mean, you could also create them, but it's a pain in the butt and way too over my head. I'd rather spend the $100 or whatever. So I could apply an action here and I'll show you just what that is, just like we can talk a little bit about layers to a photo and how you can use layer masks to adjust the photo. So it takes just a hot second here to load this action because it has so many different layers. You can see here on the side what it's actually loading. But eventually it'll come up and then we'll be able to use the brush tool to brush on these features. Does anybody have questions about Lightroom while this is loading? No, we're good. Okay, good, it loaded. So my background image is still right here. That's the one I uploaded from Lightroom. Okay. All these things here, the black little features here are layer masks that I can draw on basically using a brush to apply a feature to this photo. Okay. So this first one has a mixture of things, but it's called baby butter. So basically it's just like smoothing skin. So I'm going to move into her skin again. I'm going to hit the brush tool, which is right here. You can change the size again up here. The opacity of this, I don't go too high for opacity on this, but because you'll see why. If I did 100%, it's going to be like crazy. Like she's going to look like a baby doll. Okay. So usually I do, oops. I don't want to do that. Okay. Usually I do about like 60%. And I just start kind of like going over her skin here, and you can kind of see it's fading out a little bit, some of the bumps, some of the imperfections, just kind of like smoothing it over. This one has two different smoothing techniques in it. But if you look over here, see how I'm painting on like a white? My right here is the color that I'm painting onto that layer mask, but it's actually putting through to the image this balm that it's already been created for me. You can create this like if you wanted to do like just exposure, you can create just exposure and paint it on where you wanted it to be more exposed. Then like a texture scrub, skin tones, all those things you can just paint on. Okay. I'm not going to get too crazy into this, but once I had all my things done, I'm going to flatten the image. You can also like select all and right click and do like, I think merge layers. That's the one right there. So I'm back to just my background photo. Once I have everything I like in Photoshop, I am going to send it right back into Lightroom. So here's my final image that I created in Photoshop. I hit Command Save or Command S, and it's going to save it back into Photoshop, and I'll show you what it does in Photoshop. So here's what the original image that we edited, and then it saves another copy here that has our edits from Photoshop onto it. Does that make sense? The only thing that's kind of crazy about Lightroom is then it resets it all of your color grading or all of your color things over here. So you really want to make sure, like for me, I just want to make sure that my colors and stuff are great before I put it into Photoshop and save it back into Lightroom. Otherwise, it's kind of an issue when you come back into Lightroom. So that is Culling Lightroom Photoshop. Let me just go back to my presentation here. Make sure I didn't forget anything. Straightening, copying, healing, masking. We did that. Catalogs, folders, smart previews and plugins. We talked about that. Yep, basically. Oh, there's a few things. Let's quick talk. Let's say like there was part of my light or something was right here in this Photoshop or in this picture, and I wanted to use how do I describe this? There's something here that I wanted to remove. I could come over here, use this lasso tool, and I'm just gonna let's say there was, like a light there. I want to remove it and replace it with something similar to the background over here. So I just selected it. You can go edit, fill, make sure it's on content aware, and then hit OK. And it would basically fill this spot with what it thinks should be around it. Okay. So if there was something there that I didn't want to be there, it would replace it with what it thinks it should be. Okay. It's kind of hard to see in that example, but we're just going to make that go away. Okay. I don't want to save this. So that was content aware. You can Google that too if you have more questions on that. Image delivery though. So finally, I have all of my images saved or edited in Photoshop, and I'm ready to deliver them. Obviously, I can't send a raw file to my clients because most computers won't open them. I want to send a JPEG image to my client. So if I finished editing this image, I just want to export this one, for example. I'm going to right click, hit export, export. then comes up with our file settings, okay, and how we can export it. I have all mine saved. You can like rename it however you want. We want it to be a JPEG. I always have my quality up at 100. I resize to fit the long edge at 3800 pixels at 300 resolution. These are things that you can like Google to see what's best. And sometimes I have to increase the pixels if someone wants to like blow up a photo huge, okay? But this is, I found pretty good settings for exporting images. All different kind of things. You want to add a watermark, you can do that. After post-processing, you can show in the folder, whatever. So there's all these things. For now, I'm going to put it in my for posting folder. This is where you choose where you want to save it at. Normally, I would save them back into my hard drive, but I'm going to export it here. So then Lightroom exports the file. Then I go over, we can use any of these things. Pixieset, PicTime, ShootProof. These are some of the like more popular delivery services that photographers are using nowadays. I use Pixieset. I know a lot of people use PicTime or ShootProof too. So I'm going to show you Pixieset. I'm going to go into collections. I could create a new collection. Let's name it Harlow. Obviously, I already did hers, delivered hers, but it's fine. I'm going to select the date we did it, create the gallery. Then I'm going to add my photo. So my passport. Oops, nope. Desktop is where I saved it at. There she is. Okay, so then it uploads the photo into a collection for my mom to see. Then if I manage collection, see if we can figure this out. Basically, you can publish the gallery, and then from Pixieset, I can just deliver invites by email to whoever I want to send it to. Okay, then they can go here, view their photos, and they can see a gallery. Basically what they're going to see is this right here. Like it'll open up, give them directions, and then they can see their full gallery. All their pictures are going to be here. Okay, they can download them. So like she could go here and decide that she wanted to download the photo. She would just have to use her username and password or whatever. So that's a lot. Do you have any questions for me about my process? Obviously, every photographer does it differently. I don't put every photo into Photoshop. 98% of my editing is done in Lightroom, just because most of the time I don't need to smooth skin like on a baby or whatever. But just for this example, I wanted to show you on a baby how to put it into Photoshop. You could also put it straight into Photoshop. Like some photographers only use Photoshop. I love Lightroom. So that's where we're at. I'm going to end this recording, but if you guys have questions, you can just hang on just a second. Let me see here.